All right. You know, it's so interesting running the United Nations Association and working for the Rotary E Club of World Peace as past president and all those things. You meet people, you meet wonderful people, and you meet people who are making the world a better place. Arthur happens to be one of those people. He's a member of the Rotary E Club of World Peace. He's a film producer. He worked with, as you may have seen in the little write-up we had about him. Barbara did a fabulous job of introducing him, but he worked with people who are making a difference. Martin Sheen recently called him up and said, "What can I do to help you?" And Arthur started the ball rolling to make the movie and to make sure that PBS stations had Martin Sheen introduce our first world citizen, Gary Davis. Gary Davis was a very special person, as you will hear as Arthur talks about him today. And he was the one that allowed us to understand that we really are world citizens and we can have passports that say that. And there's so much I could tell you about this movie. But when my husband, Robert Mueller, who was the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, passed, Gary Davis was still on the planet. Arthur was on the planet. Melanie was on the planet, and they came to visit in our beautiful home in Santa Barbara. They went into the archives, we lit the candle, and I held up the Life magazine that said, "Gary Davis, world citizen, speaks to the United Nations." And I said, as Arthur will probably show you that little clip, which ended up at the end of the movie, "Someday, Gary Davis, people will wonder why we all are not world citizens, why it didn't happen earlier." So anyway, as we look at this history of a person, Arthur Kanegis, he was the one that worked in so strongly to make sure that in 1983 ABC TV special, the day after, convinced Ronald Reagan that a nuclear war was unwinnable. These are the kind of things that this man has been doing in his life. He even worked with Paul Newman, War Without Winners. Now, it sounds like he's a peace activist, and he's more than a peace activist. He's a film producer that makes sure that films communicate exactly what we want to get the world to understand. Through the motion picture industry, I present to you Arthur Kanegis, producer, and his cohort, Melanie, who is also a fantastic producer. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara. It's a real thrill to be here with your yacht club. We had a small yacht some years back, but no longer. It's actually a little racing boat. But right now, my focus is on making films, as we mentioned, and reaching the world with powerful message. Now, it's really a thrill to have Barbara here because she is a real light to the world. And I know if she's part of your club, you know what an ebullient spirit she is, spreading goodwill and cheer everywhere she goes, no matter what obstacle she faces. So I'd actually like to start off with a brief clip from the climax of the film where we will see our lovely Barbara. Melanie, are you about ready to play the clip? Melanie is our fantastic producer. She's the one who made this whole film possible. I'm the kind of creative director, and she pulls it all technically together, makes it all work. So here's the fabulous Melanie to share her screen and show you a little clip of Barbara.
Yes, just a quick hi from me. I'm Melanie Bennett, and I'm just so honored and pleased to be with this group. We're going to be sharing the first clip. It's going to show Barbara. So here we go. It's very exciting. Okay.
Now, this was when we went to her home that she just mentioned. And
I can't believe you're here. Bless you, bless you. Come on in.
Robert remembered Gary, and he thanked Gary for bringing him into this idea that we could become global citizens.
Robert was one of the great exponents of this idea. He gave his life to it. I think that people are now realizing that it is one world or one family, one human family. And either we're going to live in peace as a family, or that's it.
And I understand that the last trip that Robert took, you and he went back to that spot. Tell us about that.
Well, we were there because of the fact that we knew that Gary Davis had slept there.
So we went to the very spot where Gary had the courage to live on the line between these two countries that had fought that awful, awful war. And we allowed ourselves to experience the joy of no guards, no kiosks, of no borders. Now it's a free, open bridge. Strasbourg, where Gary took his stand, became the seat of the European Parliament, and I'm absolutely positive that Gary inspired the European Union founders. And the European Union succeeded in stopping wars between its members. What Gary said worked. Law stopped war, but it didn't go global. There's no world law against war, so wars still rage. And as you see the floods of refugees coming in and these little children being led off the boat, this is a very sad time. You know, the solution isn't to go backwards and to build more walls. It's as Gary said, think outside the box to invent new solutions.
Thank you. Invent new solutions. I guess I'd have to say that was the key thing that attracted me to Gary. You know, her husband, his motivation to become the undersecretary, the assistant secretary of the UN, and to devote his life to building a better world, actually was initiated out of the pain of war. And then he was so inspired by seeing Gary Davis right there in Strasbourg, refusing to be intimidated. He had become a citizen of the world and was not allowed to go back into France or into Germany, and so was living on the line right there in Strasbourg. When you see the whole movie, you'll understand why. When they mention kiosks and so on, those were where Gary was blocked and from going either way on the line. You'll see more if you see the whole film. In any case, that pain was also, of course, the pain of realizing that humanity was in trouble is what motivated me on my journey. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and under the threat of Cuban Missile Crisis, nuclear war, and I had the opportunity to work with Paul Newman on creating both the movie War Without Winners, incredible film about the threat that we face, but also I was the nuclear war researcher on the film The Day After. How many of you remember the film with Jason Robards walking through the ruins of nuclear war, the missiles taking off over Kansas, that big ABC special The Day After? Raise your hand if you remember that. A number of you have experienced that because 100 million Americans watched it and 200 million Soviets. It helped shake people up. It helped warn them about the impending threat of nuclear war. And what happened is, as I was doing the research, I was there in Washington, D.C., and I would go over to the Pentagon, and as they were building the sets for out in Kansas for the thing, they would need to know what the bomb damage was at the epicenter, 50 yards away, 500 yards away. So I would be going over to the Pentagon, researching all this, faxing all the data out to them. And the more I began to research and look into and recognize the threat of nuclear war and how imminent it was, I would start having nuclear war nightmares. Now, normally you wake up from a nightmare and you go, it was only a nightmare. Whew, there aren't really monsters under the bed. But there were really monsters under the bed, and all around us, we were 20 minutes away, not just from my own death, not from my family, my community, but the entire world, all life, all animals, pets, all history, music, art, everything on the verge of extinction. And this put me into kind of a panic. It began to de-energize me, and instead of motivating me, it became just too overwhelming. And I remember going and meditating in Quaker meeting, trying to calm myself down, my thoughts just whizzing onto this threat we're facing and how to reverse the arms race. I mean, we got this movie out, 100 million people saw it, but still we kept building weapons. Even to today, we're still on that verge of nuclear war. And so as I calmed myself, I thought back to this song that we would sing when we were kids in first day school, they call it, in Quaker meeting. And it goes, there's an ocean of darkness, and I drowned in the night, till I came through the darkness to the ocean of light. And the light is forever, and the light makes us free. I will dwell in the glory of the light, said he. Walk in the light wherever you may be. walk in the light wherever you may be. My old shaggy breeches and my shaggy, shaggy locks. I am walking in the glory of the light, said Fox. Fox was George Fox, the founder of the Quakers. And you know, what came to me was this realization that at the same time that we have this literal ocean of darkness, the more you look at how bad it is, it's actually worse than that. And if you thought that was bad, it's 10 times worse. And if you thought that was bad, it's even worse than that. And you can start drowning in that ocean of darkness. And at the same time, you look around and everywhere around you, people are doing good things, helping others. I see some Rotarians like Gail Jones here, others reaching out, helping other people in their community, people volunteering, people caring about the others, people passionate about making the world better. We see nature regenerating itself, animals, we see just incredible beauty all around. And I realized that I kind of had to make a personal choice. Am I going to dwell in that ocean of darkness and just let myself be consumed by it? Or am I going to recognize it? Recognize the darkness is there, understand it, know it, but dwell in that ocean of light that lifts us up. Be like Barbara, who she knows all the big hassles the world's facing, the threats, but she dwells in that ocean of light. And I said, you know, just as a practical matter, we're much more likely to survive if we dwell in that ocean of light. Look at the people who survived in the concentration camps and some of the incredible stories of people who continue to minister to others and create a light even in the midst of the deepest darkness. So I began to, I know people, I was working there with the Center for Defense Information, and people wanted me to come work on another film that would show that nuclear winter was even worse than showed in The Day After. We had to really show how bad it was. That wasn't bad enough. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, what people need is not to know how bad it is. People can't stand knowing how bad it is. Too bad. What they need is a vision of what we want to move toward. So I went on a quest to try to make movies that would depict the kind of future we all want, that would depict a positive future, that would take us on a journey. What happened is, after I'd had those nuclear war nightmares, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward came into my office. First, let me tell you, we were having a board meeting. Paul Newman was on the board of this group of retired admirals and generals speaking out for peace called Center for Defense Information. And it was quite an experience because here we were this group that was criticizing military spending, criticizing the drift to nuclear war. But because an Admiral LaRocque headed it, we could get briefings in the Pentagon. So here this kind of, you know, anti-war group is walking into the Pentagon, and the halls are lined with all the secretaries, all the people just swooning because Paul Newman's in our group and we're coming through. So we get this royal welcome in the Pentagon, and we give I gave a presentation about The Day After and the impact it had, and we got briefings from military officers and so on. And then afterwards, when we got back to the office, Paul and Joanne came into my office, and Paul said, well, what next, Kanegis? And I told him about my idea that we needed. I said about positive vision. I said to Paul, why doesn't somebody in Hollywood make a movie that takes us on a journey into the kind of future we all want to live in, into a positive future, not a dull, placid lake, but the vibrant, interactive future we could build on this planet. And Paul thought about it, and he said, Arthur, I don't think anyone in Hollywood knows what a peaceful future would look like. Why don't you do it? And so that was kind of the challenge that got me started. And I started working on, creating visions. And I wrote several draft scripts. One was called Astrocops, Peace Engineers of the 21st Century. I worked on various stories to take us into. Another one was called Oops, and it was about a near nuclear war that leads to the outbreak of accidental peace. But whatever happened, I then came across Gary's story. We were actually working on trying to get some of those other pieces financed when Gary's son said to me, if you want to make a film for a better world, read Gary's book, My Country is the World. Well, I did, and I was like, wow, this is such an incredible, uplifting story, and it does take us on a kind of journey we want. So I devoted myself to making this film about Gary Davis. And Albert Einstein himself said that Gary was the one who grasped the key to whether humanity will continue on this planet or whether we'll do ourselves in. So let me run a little clip from Martin here. Martin Sheen, where he introduces Gary and just briefly tells you about the opportunity and hope that's in this man's story. When Melanie's ready, she'll go ahead and play that. Until she plays, I'll keep talking. Just play it as soon as you can. This is Martin, as she mentioned, has been so wonderful to devote his time to helping us and continuing to do other work. Now, here we go.
Additional underwriting provided by cielolifestyle.mx, empathysurplus.com, Nancy and Al Jubitz, Yale Jones, Cinda Collins Arsenault, Laura Turner Seidel, and more outstanding Rotarians saluting Rotary International, uniting 1.2 million people of action in 35,000 clubs, volunteering in their communities and building peace around the world. Rotary.org/world.
Beautiful. We've got a picture now.
Thank you. You are about to hear from an everyday man with an extraordinary life story. A story that may well give us a roadmap to a better future. He was an actor, a song and dance man who leapt off the Broadway stage onto the world stage in 1948, taking on cops, border guards, armies, and whole nations, showing us that we don't have to be awed by their props of power and control. We don't have to accept a world ravaged by war and plunging towards environmental disaster. For 65 years, as a citizen of no nation, only the world, Gary Davis made his own props of freedom, demonstrating that we, the people, can tear down the walls of oppression and write our own story. We can build a world that is constructive for all and destructive to none. As Vermont author Abigail Stone put it, Gary Davis opens the doors of our personal jail cells, hands us the rusty old key, and says, "Don't forget to dance on the way out." So now here he is, the man Buckminster Fuller called the New World Man, Mr. Gary Davis.
Well, to see the whole film, you'll have to go to a link that Melanie will put in here. It's Where to View on our website. And you'll see that now you saw at the beginning of that, you saw that that was the version that played on PBS. And PBS allows us for a minute for sponsors before the broadcast. So what we did is Yale Jones, who's on this call right now, he was one of the wonderful lights that helped launch it. We got the idea that perhaps we could get as one of our sponsorship spots, get a number of people to sponsor us by a little spot about Rotary. And we did that. It played on this program played in 100 PBS stations across the country. It reached a huge number of people, and we got fantastic reactions. You know, we'd had reactions great to the film from the beginning. When we first showed it at Woodstock, even before it was in the regular release version, we got a standing ovation at the Minneapolis International Film Festival, and just hundreds of rave comments. Of people very enthusiastic about the film and the impact. So it's been very well received. And so thanks to Yale Jones and others, we were able to get these spots out and get the program shown on stations across the country. Now, if you'd like to watch the film, Melanie's just going to put where you click the preview, and it's very inexpensive, a little small, lowest amount, I think just a couple of bucks or something, you can watch it, or you can donate more. And but also, if you're interested, we're going to have a whole new round. I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to tell you a little bit more about the film and the story, and then at the end, I'll tell you how you might be able to be involved in a very special way in this. First of all, the thing that was so exciting about Gary to me is that, as we mentioned, he thought outside the box. As Martin said, he actually had solutions to things that seemed beyond reach. I mean, here's a film that both has just an incredible story, a guy's amazing adventure and courage and drama, but it also kind of gave us the key that Einstein talked about, and what Martin Sheen said, the roadmap to a better future. And so the most exciting part about this, you want to watch the film just for the story, whether or not you care about his solution. There are many solutions. You know, Gary kept saying, he always said, you know, the key thing is that we just make that shift in our thinking from being citizens just of our country and our city and our states. We've got to make that click in our thinking where we add the top level. And once we do, these seemingly insurmountable problems that just have no solution when we're down here inside that, locked in those boxes, the nation state box, suddenly they're eminently solvable. I wonder how many of you saw the film, for instance, Don't Look Up. You know, here DiCaprio is warning about imminent threat to the entire planet, and people aren't paying attention. Well, once we have a key to how we can turn this around, we can begin to actually solve these seemingly insurmountable problems. Partly people don't want to face those problems because they think there's no solution. So right now I'm going to ask Melanie to play a short clip of Gary talking about what an ingenious species we are and challenging the young people of today to be the Thomas Jeffersons and James Madisons of the new way of doing things in our world. We invented these current systems. All the things we're running into trouble on, we can invent something else. So let's hear Gary talk about that a bit. And I appreciate that very much, Melanie. And as she's getting that to play, I'll also just say that Gary gave a number of stage talks where we filmed him, and he did these presentations. Just started as soon as it starts, Melanie. And he, in this one, he kind of answers that key question. Oh, here it is. Okay, go ahead.
We humans are an incredibly ingenious species. Why squander our genius on inventing smart bombs to do ourselves in? Why not use our great ingenuity to invent SmartGov, a way we can all interactively and intelligently and heartfully govern our communities, our regions, and our world.
Visionary, you bet, but doesn't every advance start with imagination? When we catch the vision of a people-powered planet, then, in this era of instant communication, we'll be able to evolve the tools and the platforms we need to bring the highest and best wisdom of each individual to the task of governing planet Earth. Once we tap into the sovereignty of the whole, we can unleash the genius of humanity. End war, end oppression, solve global warming.
So that's a pretty visionary look, just a very brief look at it. But it's a challenge to have us think in different ways and to begin to think outside the box about, you know, the current system is kind of a race to the bottom. There's 51% win, 49% lose, so we're clashing with each other all the time. And what Gary did, he worked with Buckminster Fuller disciple, and they devised a synergistic system where, you know, if you take people and you put them in the same room and say who's right and who's wrong, you're just going to clash with each other. But if you come into a room together, Barbara knows all about this with revolutionary conversations and so on, and you say, well, what is it that we really want? What is our basic goal? What do we want out of life? What's our vision? What's our story? You start finding that even people, you know, Arabs and Israelis, people, you know, opposite sides of political divides all over the world that may have been viciously killing each other, when they have these certain techniques of interaction, they actually can find common ground. They can actually come together. And Gary said, you know, why don't we develop this synergistic new way of governing the world. It's sort of like these Zoom meetings we're having, but we're having a Zoom meeting like this with a group on the opposite side of the issue, and you're interacting, and you have certain tools that, like these revolutionary community tools, that you automatically get people going in the right direction rather than just arguing back and forth. They're getting to that common ground within us, and once we have a new tool, it can have a major impact. Think about the power of tools. I mean, one of the most powerful tools was that went viral. Meetings were chaotic. People didn't know where to go, what to do. So this guy, Robert, invented Robert's Rules of Order. He was a military officer. They're very rigid and so on. But that went viral, went all over the world. Parliaments, people everywhere, meetings, they were all using this tool he created. Well, Gary said, let's create a new tool that's synergistic instead of win-lose, that brings us together in positive ways. Well, I don't want to go too much into his thing because I want to leave plenty of time for a question period. But I do want to say that we haven't really talked about Gary's actual story, but the actual story, I should probably just give you a very brief synopsis of that. And that is that here he was, a song and dance man on Broadway, and then he's ordered to bomb. World War II comes along. He's a Danny Kaye type song and dance man. Great fun. Danny Kaye's understudy, and he's ordered to bomb the city of Brandenburg. And he says, "Oh my God, I'm here on Earth to make people laugh, not to kill them in their homes and schools and factories." He proudly bombed Peenemünde, the war factory, but why am I bombing people in their cities? They didn't do anything to me. I'm blowing them up, and his own brother was killed, and he was so pained. And he realized he had to do something, and he went on this quest. And eventually he discovered that the key was that we're all, locked in these boxes called nation states. So he ended up going to Paris, where the UN was meeting, and he ended up, he gave up any national citizenship anywhere in the world. He said to the UN, "I'm your first world citizen. What we need is to be world citizens. I'm here." Well, of course, the Soviet rep said, "States may join, diapered citizens yet." They wouldn't let them in. But this created such a storm that people all over Paris and all over Europe rallied to his defense. He had Albert Einstein, Camus, Sartre, so many famous intellectuals, and just 20,000 people rallying with it at the Velodrome, demanding that the UN recognize the rights of humanity. And the very next day, that was December 9th, 1948, December 10th, the Soviets, who had been adamantly blocking the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stepped aside, let it get passed unanimously, and we now have that crucial document, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Gary's story just goes on, but it's full of drama, action, amazing fun story, but also very enlightening about how we can create a better world. And I think I'll open it to questions period. Try to leave like half hour of talking and then get to the questions. But I do want to play one more clip before we do, because how many of you, let me just see in the view here. Let me turn it to the gallery view a second. How many of you saw Don't Look Up? Raise your hand if you saw the movie Don't Look Up. Some of you, not too many. Anyway, it's a movie about in all the theaters now about a comet coming to the U.S. and people aren't waking up to do what they have to prevent its impact. Well, he was basically giving this, Leonardo Dicaprio in that film was giving this warning, and I'm going to play a little clip of my chat with him at the 11th hour press conference, where he was saying that humanity really is at the 11th hour and that we need to take action to turn it around. So we're faced with lots of threats, from pandemic, nuclear war, climate disaster. But here we go with a little clip of Leonardo Dicaprio, and you'll see his answer to my question.
Global warming is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and change of weather that we've been having, the weather patterns, the flooding, hurricanes. Obviously, human beings have had a devastating impact on our planet. It seems now more so than ever we're at a real tipping point.
I'd like to ask Leo particularly, there's an old movie cliche, the planet is in peril, and it's the 11th hour, and things look really dark, and at the last minute our hero swoops in and saves the day, saves the world. Who's the hero who's going to save us?
I think there's got to be millions of heroes. That's my answer to that. This is a gigantic worldwide movement that needs to cross cultural boundaries, religious boundaries. It needs to unify all of us. And I think how can you argue with wanting cleaner air, cleaner water? You know, these are fundamental human rights issues at the end of the day, and that's why it is such a universal issue and a movement that we all, you know, should be a part of. Everything has to come from the will of the people.
So everything has to come from the will of the people. You know, the strange thing in the world right now is that even though we have this powerful United Nations, that was a step forward. I mean, we haven't blown up the world in the last 75 years, as Eleanor Roosevelt said. At least it was a place nations could talk, could throw words at each other instead of missiles. But we haven't created peace. We haven't got on top of the challenges we're facing, and partly because that was a great step forward, but it was never intended to be the be-all and end-all. We need to find a way to start creating world law above the nations that divide us. That's really the key. And when you look at it, when do you bring peace? I mean, look at Europe. All these nations had centuries of terrible war. That's what Robert Mueller came out of. Just, you know, Strasbourg would go back and forth between Germany and France. First one would own it, then the other, and they would conquer them. They would conquer, and more people killing back and forth. And you know, the whole continent was like that, just torn apart by war. And then when they did create the European Union, when they created some system of law since then, in that time since then, in that 75 years, a nation that had been torn apart by hundreds of years of war has not had a single war between member nations. They've had problems, they've had challenges, they've had civil wars inside, but they haven't fought each other because they could take the case to court instead of taking it to war. So, you know, it's incredible. Human beings, Gary said, it's amazing. Humans have already invented a system that eliminates war. It's called law. And, you know, it doesn't solve all the problems. Like, it doesn't mean that we don't have, you know, the crimes in our country and so on, but you handle them as a criminal justice system. You know, when years back when in Oklahoma City, when Tim McVeigh blew up the federal building, you know, Oklahoma didn't declare war on Michigan for harboring the Michigan militia. You know, it was handled as a criminal justice thing, and it was handled. And that's how we handle disputes when we consider the world as our country. And that's what our film is called. The world is my country. So what I want to do is to throw it open to questions and discussion, and talk about how we can move to bring us together, how we can move to find a way to unite our planet so we rise above these challenges we face. Go ahead. Anybody have questions yet?
Thank you, Arthur. I want to tell you that you're like a walking encyclopedia of what we need to do. And I was wondering, because so many people are wondering, how did you get all this research together for a Gary Davis movie? Because you have so many clips of what he was doing with things, and also you're very accurate about what went on during that period. How did you do your research?
Well, it's a team effort, and you know, Melanie, of course, and Jordan are part of it, but we also had, for instance, photo researchers in France. We had photo researchers at the Library of Congress in Washington. We had people digging up all the incredible background information. We worked for many years on this film. It wasn't a quick film to make, but it was something that, as you said, did pull together. Actually, we had a remarkable editor who had pulled together, you know, shows on 3 stages and all this different material into one seamless whole that has a compelling hero's journey story structure, and feels like, you know, one story, but it's really thousands of different pieces all pieced together to make this story. So I thank you for that question, Barbara. And I think, you know, the answer is it's a team effort.
Mm-hmm. We had a question in the chat about, have you heard of the movie about Seeds of Peace?
Seeds of Peace. Tell us about it. Whoever put that in the chat, can they come?
Yeah, it's not a film. It's a conflict resolution organization that brings young people from Arab countries and Israel to a camp in Maine. It has an interesting story to it. John Wallach, I don't know if that name means anything to you, but Wallach ran the international desk for Hearst newspapers out of DC.
Rob, can you lower your camera a little bit? You're half cut off at the bottom. I'm trying to.
See,
now I can see you.
There you go. Well, I'll move.
No more.
I apologize.
There we go.
I find the ship behind me.
Very important point you're making, and I really.
All right, good. So anyway, John Wallach ran the international desk for Hearst newspapers, and at an embassy event, banged two wine glasses together and told the assembled, they were diplomats from all around the Middle East, that he had a camp and he was looking for the best and the brightest from these various countries. And he turned to Egypt, and he turned to the ambassador from Libya, and he turned to the Israeli ambassador. And of course, they all said, well, of course, we'll help you identify a dozen or 16 kids. So he got home that evening, and his wife said, Janet Wallach, who's quite a well-known author, said, well, John, where is this camp? He said, I have no idea, but we're going to find one.
Very good. That's the way to do it.
And as a result, he created Seeds of Peace, which is a very interesting organization. They've been in existence for 30 or 40 years. My daughter ran their center in Jerusalem for several years. Anyway, and there's just there are all these initiatives. Interfaith America, which used to be Interfaith Youth Corps, brings together kids of varying religions in community service projects. Think of Habitat for Humanity. Ibu Patel, a Chicago-born Indian Muslim, created that. And so there are so many initiatives now, particularly involving young and formative years, right, that seek to do what it is you're evangelizing here. And it's wonderful. I was not familiar with the films that you've mentioned, and I'm going to circulate those with keen interest to that cadre of people that I know.
Great.
Thank you.
If there's some
we can have conversations about things that we believe in because of Zoom. We just have to post something that says, I'd like to talk to you about Gary Davis World Citizenship. And then we post and people can have a conversation. But again, I'm going to thank you, Arthur, for the research that you did, but I don't know if you slightly gave enough information about Gary going to the United Nations and actually standing on that balcony and talking for 1 hour about the world that he wanted. And that's when the United Nations, Russia was there at that time, and that's when Russia said, well, why shouldn't we have the Declaration of Human Rights, International Declaration of Human Rights?
Melanie, can you go ahead and play the trailer that's called the Extinction Warning, where we see a little bit of Gary's interruption there and what happened. And while she's preparing that, it'll take her a minute to grab that. I'll also answer it, and then we'll play that a minute. Yes, it is a phenomenal story of what happened because, first of all, Gary, when he became a citizen of the world and with no national citizenship, France said you have to leave, and Gary said, France wouldn't, no one else would take him as a world citizen. He had no national papers. And so then he saw that the United Nations, they had turned the key to the UN, the key to the Palais des Charlots over to the UN for the duration of the session. So Gary said, world citizenship right here in Paris. That was where he was when he had to give up his national citizenship to become a world citizen. And by the way, he didn't advocate that anybody else do that. He just wanted to, as Einstein said, make a sacrifice of himself to make that point that we have to become world citizens. But anyway, when he went to the UN grounds and he rolled up his sleeping bag, went to sleep, the policeman said, you can't stay here. And he showed him his refuse de séjour and said, if you push me back into France, you'll be guilty of importing an illegal alien. The guy goes, whoa, I got to go get some direction. So all this world media revolves around this guy. It becomes a story all over the world. And eventually, with, like I said, Camus and Sartre and the others, they plot a big effort. And what happens is they end up sort of covertly going into the UN as separately, the parts of this powerful movement. And then at a key moment when the Soviet delegate is haranguing about how the Universal Declaration is an intolerable intrusion on their national sovereignty and so on, Gary leaps up in the middle of the station. Let me, Melanie, show you. Are you ready with the clip yet?
We were doing things a little bit differently, so we're going to give it a go. Because this is actually on YouTube, so we're going to see if that works. So we shall see. One moment.
Okay, do you have host now?
Well, while you're waiting, I just interviewed Mark Ottinger, and
Okay.
he's a man who, Gary Davis, well, I'll tell it in a minute. Extinction warnings to the UN. Okay.
At a recent sitting of the United Nations General Assembly, there was an astonishing outburst from Mr. Gary Davis, known as World Citizen #1.
I pass the word to the people.
So what I did was I got up before anybody could stop me. There were balcony railings there. I leaped over the balcony railings out to the front where everybody could see me, and I shouted,
I interrupt to make a
I interrupt in the name of the people not represented here. Well, I started. The nations you represent divide us and lead us to the abyss of total war. What we need is one world. And if you won't do it, step aside. And a People's World Assembly will arise from our own ranks to do it, because we can be served by nothing less.
He was an actor, a song and dance man who leapt off the Broadway stage onto the world stage in 1948, taking on cops, border guards, armies, and whole nations, showing us that we don't have to be awed by their props of power and control. We don't have to accept a world ravaged by war and plunging towards environmental disaster. For 65 years, as a citizen of no nation, only the world, Gary Davis made his own props of freedom, demonstrating that we, the people, can tear down the walls of oppression and write our own story. We can build a world that is constructive for all and destructive to none. A world in which all of us can truly say, the world is my country.
That's one of our trailers for the film. We have several of them, but you do see his interruption there. And what happened? He only got to talk for a couple of minutes. But what happened? Because they grabbed him. But then Robert Saraszak jumped up to continue his talk. And then when he finished jumping up another one, they did all these famous French intellectuals who all had novels and were widely respected. They all started leaping up, and they held the floor there for a full hour, as Barbara mentioned. Even though, and then there's a very interesting story told in our movie where Pierre Berger, who was one of the founders of Yves Saint Laurent, talks about how he spent the night in a sort of makeshift prison in the UN with Albert Camus and so on. Anyway, quite a story. You'll enjoy it. I think, Melanie, they just go to theworldismycountry.com and then just click on the little tab that says where to view, and you can view it right there. And if you decide you want to be part of, well, I'll tell you about an amazing opportunity that we have now. What happens is you saw that round of the little spot before the TV commercial that played. Well, right now, we have an opportunity to make another 60-second spot with other sponsors. And this time, it's not only going to go out on PBS stations, even more others than the 100. There are many, like some markets that missed it. There are people that missed seeing it on PBS. So it's going to go on PBS stations across the country, but it's also going out on Link TV to the Dish Network, DirecTV, and it'll be going out across the country. Now, Dish Network goes out to 31 million homes, of which 4 million watch regularly, and of those, 57% report they take an action of things that they see on Link TV. So it's an incredible place to get it out. And what we're offering now is a chance for people to become sponsors. They can contribute. Well, the total cost for like the 60 seconds we're putting up is it's like $300,000 worth of advertising, but people can have a piece of that. They can have a 15-second, a 30-second. The little piece we saw about Rotary was a 15-second, and people could have. You could have your businesses, your organizations, civic groups, and you can get word out around the country. And at the same time, the great part about it is that this money doesn't go to the TV station. This goes to our nonprofit, Future Wave, to help us get this film out more widely, develop it into the series that Martin Sheen wants us to develop, to do other things, to basically support us to carry on this effort. And so what happens, it's a tax-deductible donation to Future Wave, a 501c3. So you get both the tax-deductible donation and you get to promote your organization, group, Rotary Club, Yacht Club, whatever you want to be a part of that. And Yale actually did a fantastic job. I don't know if Yale, if you're still available, but I don't know if you want to unmute or make a comment, but I was just so thrilled that you took the courage to say, okay, I'm going to pitch in the first 5 and I'll challenge others to join me. And then a number of other people all jumped in and joined us, Al Jubitz and various others. And we did succeed. I mean, it's thanks to Yale. If he hadn't taken that initial effort, we wouldn't have had this out on 100 PBS stations. So Yale, I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Any comment or any thought about that?
No, not really. I mean, we're trying to push a very big rock, and every millimeter we move it is a positive step.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it. We've got a very big rock. We're kind of pushing it up this hill, and it could roll back and crush us. But if we all join together, as Leonardo Dicaprio said, we can do it. But we first need that spark of the idea, and this idea, we have to ignite that spark of world citizenship. So if any of you might be interested in being a sponsor, what you can do is you can email me, Arthur Kanegis, the name right on my screen. You'll see arthurkanegis@gmail.com right below my name, or Melanie will also put in the chat. And if you email me, first of all, I'll give you a free link to watch the film, and you can consider being a sponsor.
The other part too that I love is that Gary started the first world citizenship passport. And my daughter was in Guatemala, and they had a camp full of refugees. And these people could not leave. They didn't have a passport. And that world citizen passport was given, a whole bunch were given to them, and they were able to leave. And it was like that world citizen's passport does work. And that was started by Gary Davis.
Yeah, take a look at the one Melanie has. She's showing you on the screen. If you can see it, I don't know if she has to talk to get into the spotlight view here. Mm-hmm. You might have.
It's very official.
Unmute a second, Melanie, to show you.
Here we are. This is the passport. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Now look at the dates.
Thank you, Melanie. Gary was way ahead of his time, but he also, because he was a movie star, had people already knowing him, and I think that was really important. And that was what, when I talked to Martin Sheen, he said, well, Gary was a movie star, so I thought, if a movie star can do this, I can do this. And so that's how he became involved. And it's almost like who you know sometimes that helps you make decisions. And that's why I wanted Arthur to speak to our yacht club, because it's who you know, and you spread the word by your conversation. I remember Maya Angelou saying, the words are there, but it's the human voice that makes them real. And that's what Gary Davis did, that man who never gave up. And the things that he did would just make you say, well, if he can do it, so can I. Arthur?
Yes, so definitely. He was an incredible person of courage. One of the producers I worked with said he was the bravest man I know. Nothing fazed him, no threat of death. 34 jails. He went to 34 jails for not for committing a crime, all for believing that we could be citizens of our one planet and walk God's green earth as we choose. And most of them were before he actually made the world passport. He realized, hey, they all want a piece of paper. And so, hey, I'll give them a piece of paper. So he ended up developing the world passport. And he did everything that he created was under a clause mandated by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It actually says in the preamble that everybody in every organ of society is supposed to enforce it. And so Gary went ahead and enforced our Article 13.2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which said that everyone has the right to leave their country and return to their own. And so everyone has that right to travel. And so this has been, as Barbara mentioned, a powerful way to help so many thousands and thousands of stateless refugees and other people. But it's not a guaranteed travel document, especially now these days, even though actually of the 100, is it 188, Melanie, how many is 188, I believe, nations have stamped it around the world one time or another, and there's only like 193 in the UN. They don't always, they may stamp it one time and another official accept it, another one won't. So it's not an easy travel document, but it's a way to claim our rights as citizens of this one world. I'd like to throw it open to ask you, Barbara mentioned connections. Who thinks that they might be able to help us with putting together sponsors for this next round on TV? Who would like to watch the film and see whether it might be something that they'd like to sponsor with their business or with their organization? Anybody interested in knowing more about that and becoming sponsors?
I'm interested in helping sponsor it. I don't have any business to put on, but
maybe
sign up to sponsor a
private
little bit.
citizen.
Yes, you don't need most of the people who are supporting it. Before that little clip we played, there are other individuals. So yes, you can just if you make a donation of 5,000 or more, you can have your name shown before the show, or you can make a donation of any amount. You won't be on screen before PBS, but you'll be helping us. So all that helps. Melanie can actually also put in the link or GoFundMe, but the best thing is just email me, Arthur Kanegis at Gmail. Judith, tell me a little bit more about you.
Well, let's see. Well, I was raised overseas, so I think that I sometimes have a little different view of the world, but I certainly don't want us to blow ourselves up, and it looks like we are pretty close sometimes. So I'd like to have this film shown at the White House.
Oh, good for you. Well, that's what we need. So yes, let's, by the way, if you'd like to have a actual showing, I don't know, you must have, I know you have other speakers coming up, but the TV version is 57 minutes. It could be played at one of your club meetings, and then we could have a discussion, or we could have a separate one and just do a Q&A afterwards. But yes, so Judith, how do we get in touch with you? Are you, you want to put in the chat your email and now they can get it, or we'll love to follow up with you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Judith. That's wonderful. So yeah, you're like Yale jumped aboard and we got things going. And it sounds like Judith wants to jump in. Who else is possibly interested in
Well,
that?
if you look in the chat,
info.
there are people who are putting information into the chat. One is about worldmerit.org. And I knew the father-in-law, Mr. Boehm, who started so many wonderful things in Santa Barbara. So you're getting some information in the chat that may be helpful.
Great. Melanie will take that down. I'm not focusing on the chat. I'll let her handle that. So good. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. So any other questions, comments, people who want to jump in to help get the story out and to watch it and join in this effort to avert, as Judith said, the threat we're facing. So, we seem to have almost forgotten about that nuclear war threat, which hasn't gotten any less. The bulletin of the atomic scientist says we're 100 seconds away from, a proverbial 100 seconds away from doom of the human race. And, you look out at this world, here we have this just incredibly beautiful, rich planet, and you travel. We've been sending probes all through space light years and light years away, and nowhere do we find anything beautiful like this. We've been sending signals out, and we're not getting signals back. This may be, it's certainly such a unique, incredible, precious gift we've been given with this Earth, and to think that we would blow it for these stupid little geopolitical reasons that mean nothing in the long run. They're like gibberish back and forth, and we're going to do this. They're like schoolyard bullies. It's this little garbage we're fighting over, and we're literally threatening the life of the planet. And we can come together as a species. We can solve it as soon as we lift our thinking up to that world citizen level and get out of this nation state box. These problems are solvable, and we can do it. Yes, do want you to join us. This is the most important quest of all, keeping this beautiful blue marble going. Here, let me show you where I am. I'm down here in Baja, living by the gorgeous ocean. And every day I just relish in the beauty of nature and the beauty that we have. And
Great.
This blue marble is. So let's save it, folks.
I see Yale would like to ask a question or make a comment.
Yes, if there's time. My question is, Melanie and Arthur and Barbara, in addition to promoting this film and helping to disseminate it, what individual actions, tell me 2 or 3 individual actions you think people can take to help with peace building?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I think one is what you're doing. You're part of Rotary. That's one of the groups that were, and Barbara had started this Rotary E-Club of World Peace. So was one of the people founding it, and that's an organization that reaches all over the world. Shekhar Mehta, the president of Rotary International, loved Gary Davis's film. He compared it to Gandhi, and he quoted John Lennon. We all need this inspiring view. So one thing is, of course, I think the key thing is it's what not to do, what to do. Yes, we do need to be, lobbying our congressmen to stop more war funding and so on. But sometimes it feels like we're running and trying to do this and that, and we're feeling like we're not getting anywhere because we win one battle, we lose another. And we've managed to stave off destruction so far. But the real key is to inspire young people and work with young people to invent something new, something above this divided system. And when Jefferson and the others got together and invented the system that we have, they expected it to continue to evolve and not to just be stuck in one system forever. We need to do it at the global level. I mean, when you look at it, there really is a way to solve all these problems if we can start creating actually institutions that we can do interactively. You see, the thing about it is, it used to be, we're now discovering with Zoom and everything else, we can do so many things interactively we used to have to think we had to do in person. Gary's idea of this governance system was not one that used military power and force to make things happen. It's bringing together the power of the people, and the elements of it are all starting to come together, which is, you start coming together as a planet to create the will of the people at the global level. And that's what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, what the Declaration of Independence says, it is the right of the people to institute new government. And Gary said, wow, if we have the right to institute government, let's just do it at the global level. And he had the nerve, you'll see in the movie, to actually go out and declare a government of, by, and for the people of the world. Now he said, who am I to do that? He kind of laughs at himself, but we're all people. Somebody's got to take the first step. What we actually have to do is to start, I'd say the most important thing is to start building interactive institutions. We can build the system online. We can bring some of these great tech experts in together with us and build a way where we can start to amalgamate the will of the people at the global level. Nobody wants nuclear war. No one wants the planet to be plundered, destroyed. And we're not getting what we want because we're stuck in broken old systems. We have to start inventing new systems. We've got to challenge young people, in our commencement addresses and other things, go out and be the Thomas Jeffersons and Dolly Madisons of inventing, a better way to run this planet. We can't just be stuck in the old systems and expect it to solve problems. Barbara, you're muted. That's what Einstein said you can't solve something in the old
That,
system.
Arthur's talking about is finding like-minded people. When you find people who support your point of view, it really does help you stay focused on what you want the world to be. And so I recommend that everybody join a United Nations association. There are local United Nations associations in the United States. There's over 200 of them. I'm president of our United Nations Association in Santa Barbara. Judith Mueller's a member. And then I do peacepodcast.org for inspiration. It's a free 15-minute podcast that shows you who are working, who are the people working for peace. How can you support them? Find things that inspire you. If you don't have a channel that inspires you, go to peacepodcast.org and listen to these hundreds of speakers that I've had the opportunity to interview about what they're doing for peace. And it gives you the opportunity to do, as Robert said, maybe create a bench of dreams, maybe have a peace corner in your home, someplace where you can go and you can say, yes, this is my spot where peace is possible. And it reminds you to have peace in your life. So it's an effort. It's not something you put on the back burner and hope that it happens. It's up to all of us. Thank you, Arthur.
I'm glad that Barbara mentioned her podcast, and that's another key thing you can do. Every week, we have a People-Powered Planet podcast where we explore how do we actually begin to build the systems and techniques of being a better way to run the planet. And we've had amazing speakers. If you go to theworldismycountry.com and click on the podcast, People-Powered Planet podcast link, you'll see wonderful speakers, and you can sign up. You can sign up for initially free, and we invite you to come on as join as a member and listen to every week, and go through and listen to some of the past speakers we've had. We've had, of course, we've had Barbara, and we've had people who are part of Rotary. We've also had like the head of the Leonardo. Well, we've had so many amazing speakers from Eleanor Roosevelt's son and so on. So go take a look.
Well, you know, Arthur, we're almost out of time, and I'd like to give the last minute to you to tell us what you would like us to do, what action, and then maybe Judith could sign off. And we're so grateful you were on today. You know, our Santa Barbara community has more nonprofits than probably any other community in the world, and we all believe that we are important to the peace puzzle. Thank you.
Yes.
You all are so important, and I think that's the key. The key is what Leonardo Dicaprio said: the hero is you, and you've got to be your own hero, and you've got to be the hero who joins with us to build the world we choose. So I guess the first step is watch the film at theworldismycountry.com and click to become a part of our regular weekly podcast, and then join in being a sponsor of getting this out on TV all over the country. Anything you want to donate is good. And Molly did put it, the GoFundMe, you know, small amounts, large amounts, but if you do contribute a significant amount of $5,000 listed and get out across the country.
Thank you so very much, Arthur, for being with us. It's always good to be inspired, and especially on dark and cloudy days in Santa Barbara. The sun hasn't come out here yet. To be uplifted and to know that I'm not the only one who hopes that the world doesn't blow itself up and become extinct. I'm glad to know that there are so many other people out there working for the continuation of this beautiful place. Thanks again for being with us, and thank you for your work, and I'll look forward to looking at the films and perhaps finding a location where I can even show them. So thanks again, and thank you for all the information that you have shared with us, and we look forward to the possibility of being citizens of the world. Thank you again. So we're signing off. I hope you'll join us next week. Oh, let's see. I'll tell you. Oh, next week we'll be hearing from Milton Love, and he's an ichthyologist, a fish expert, and we'll look forward to hearing what he has to tell us about the beauty of the fish and the undersea world. So thank you again, and thank you, Barbara, for getting us connected with Arthur.
My pleasure.
Good day, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Okay.
Have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you to Yale.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Barbara. And thanks, Judith.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
So good
Bye,
to know
Arthur.
these things.
Bye.
Okay.
Enjoy Baja.
You all come down.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye-bye.